Going on, good people? My name is Tanner, and I want to share with you 4 mistakes that I want you to avoid when starting your residential home service business. In my case, it was my house painting business. These mistakes that I made are mistakes that I'm continuously thankful that I pivoted from, and I know that these are common mistakes that you might not even really be thinking about are mistakes. So when I first started my business, I had all sorts of questions about what is the right way to do things, what's the wrong way to do things. And ultimately, I took a lot of shortcuts, and it kind of was because I didn't really know what to do. So it was easier to just stick with what I was doing. And I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on a mindset that I want you to adopt as a business owner. And that is dig your well before you're thirsty. And this is like a mantra that I always use in all areas of my life. I'm a very faithful individual. So for me, this is just an act of faith. I believe that when you have something that you are striving toward, you need to act in a way as if you already have it. And that sometimes requires you doing uncomfortable things that don't really make sense right now, but later on, obviously, will have a big payoff. And this is just a theme of my life. This is how I've achieved some really cool things that I'm very proud of. So when I say dig your well before you're thirsty, mistake number one was me thinking that I could get away with paying people under the table, just writing a check, 1099, and thinking that I was getting what I believe to be a short-term gain by doing that, right? And the big thing is, hey, you don't have to pay taxes on, right? You don't have to, it's cheaper, it's easier. You don't need a payroll company, just write the check, right? And this worked for a little bit, but what I started to notice early on was that it was creating this kind of fear that I was doing something illegal. And that's just the reality of the situation. These weren't bona fide subcontractors. These were employees that it was just easy to just write them a check at the end of the week. So the mistake that I made was thinking that this was a way to do business, and it wasn't. This was not a way of $1 million operation. This was a way of somebody who made a little money selling paint jobs. So for me, I kind of had to step back and realize, okay, where do I see myself in 2, 3, 4 years? And it was having an operation that I could be proud of, audit proof, and ultimately something that benefits the individuals that are working for me, right? So, and that's a good point when it comes to paying, because ultimately the individuals that you're writing those checks to and you're not taking taxes out of, they're the ones ultimately that get penalized the most if there's ever an audit, or if they maybe want to get a car or they want to get an apartment. They have a lot of trouble proving their income. So misclassifying workers is the key here. And that ultimately was one of the mistakes that I wanted to avoid. And ultimately I did. How did I avoid this mistake? Well, the first thing I did was recognize that I did not know what I was doing, right? And I think that's the first step to growth, is really just admitting that you have no clue what you're doing. And that's totally okay. Business is hard. Business is complex. So step number one is recognize you don't know what you're doing and find someone else who does. So the first step I did was reach out to someone who owned a business and ask what they were using to pay their employees. And again, there's so many instances where I do coaching, or I just really just know that most people don't do it, not because they're trying to do something wrong. It's just they don't know the alternative, or they don't know how to achieve the alternative, right? But again, if I'm coaching you and you're listening to this, I want you to think of yourself as that $1 million operator. I want you to think of yourself as somebody that is going to be proud of a business that has all of the T's crossed, the I's dotted, and it's a business that has a strong foundation, because anything that you build, it has to have a strong foundation, or at one point or another, you're going to have to go down to that foundation, which the longer you wait, the harder it will be. So again, we're going in with faith that we're going to grow a powerful, strong, really a blessed business. So for me, it was making the tough decision first to identify I don't know what I'm doing. Second, be resourceful. Reach out to someone who does. In this case, you're watching this video, so obviously you're already resourceful. So in this case, you're already on step 2. But here's step 3, is taking action. And in this case, I had to find a payroll company. I had to seek the payroll company and admit, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to use my resources to pay you to do it. And this is a recurring strategy that you're going to use throughout the growth of your business is identifying what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you can delegate to someone else or an entity to take care of it for you. So it actually started off with me utilizing a program called Paychecks, which is actually at the time, it was more of a peer type service where I would have someone, not, I guess not peer, but it was more manual than anything. It wasn't like a software, but they handled everything. I would email them the hours of my employees every week. They would take it out of the bank account. They'd pay the taxes on it. They'd pay the workers' comp, and then they would pay the employees. Same thing now is with Gusto, which is my recommendation. Gusto is a self-serve option. It is the easiest program that does so many things. I could not run my businesses without it. So mistake number one was not doing payroll the right way. And again, I can't emphasize enough how important this is. Mistake number two, early on in my business, I lived in the mindset of scarcity, right? A lot of us do, and it's okay because you kind of are a little uncertain of everything. Mistake number two was taking on things that were not my ideal job type. Okay, so I got myself in a lot of trouble saying yes to things that I should have probably said no to. So here's an example. I had a great customer. They hired us to paint the inside of their house. This was actually a referral from someone that I knew that was doing cabinet coatings at the time. And he said, hey, this guy needs his whole house painted. Can you come and give him a quote? So it was a lock. Got the job. It was like a $4,000 job. It was great, right? 3-day job. Perfect. As we're working on the house, the customer starts to emphasize the different things that he's wanting to do. And in this case, he said that he wanted to remove tile in the main living area of the house, and he wanted new flooring laid, and he needed someone to remove the tile. Well, in this case, I volunteered because I saw dollar signs. I said, you know what, we can remove the tile. And ultimately, as a painting company, we really weren't, obviously equipped to do this job. I had no experience doing it, but one person on my team did. And this was a detriment to our business. This ultimately really shifted the entire job from a great experience to a poor experience. We lost money on it because it took way longer than we thought it would. And what that really did, the opportunity cost, right? What we're giving up in exchange for what we're taking on was the fact that there were other paint jobs that I probably could be doing, but instead I was sitting there trying to figure out how to remove tile on a job that I underbid anyway. But this was a big lesson to me. Ultimately, it helped me see that I can't be a generalist. I have to be a specialist. And ultimately, I have to learn how to say no. And again, this isn't just a lesson for some people that are just starting their business. This is a lesson for people that are in their business right now and having issues, right? And it doesn't have to be something as night and day as a painting company taking on a tile job. This could be something as as subtle as a painting company taking on popcorn removal. And it's not so much that I want you to say no, it's that I want you to see the impact of the decision. And generally speaking, when companies take on something that's not their specialty, it's because they don't have confidence in their marketing, right? In other words, they don't know where the next job is coming from. You're not doing it with malice. You're not doing it with poor intent. You're not doing it to stress out your team, which we know is happening, right? If you hire someone to do painting and next thing you know, they're scraping popcorn and doing all these crazy tasks that you're having them do, they're probably going to be looking for another job, or they're probably going to be pinging you for more money because it's not fair. And I think as a business, you need to look out for your team members, and you got to position them in a way that they could be successful, but not do things that are outside of what the initial exchange was when you hired them. So ultimately, this is your fault. That was the second thing I had to do, is recognize that it's my fault. And that brings me to the third thing. Okay, so number one, what did we learn? First thing is paying workers the right way is a foundational move. It's a faith move. It's digging the well before you're thirsty. That's number one. Number two, saying no. Learning how to say no was so important for me because ultimately I recognized that I need to be a specialist. If I can do painting really, really well, there's going to be other painting jobs for me to take on, and I need to give up that short-term gain, which has long-term impact, to obviously position myself for what we're best at as a company. And number three, this is a big one. Number three is thinking that I can market my business on my own. Okay, so that was the biggest mistake that I made, thinking that my little bit of marketing knowledge early on was enough to sustain the growth of my business. Now, the reason why word of mouth is dangerous in the early stages of your business is because it's a random occurrence, right? So in other words, you have no control over when somebody reaches out to you or when that phone rings, okay? You have absolutely no control. You don't know when it happens. You're sitting here, you're just going to wait for that phone to ring, wait for this thing. You could just leave it here and just kind of stare at it until somebody calls you. And the problem is that this leads to issues that I mentioned before, right? Taking on jobs that are not your ideal job type. It also leads to potentially not making tough decisions when it comes to hiring, right? Uncomfortable decisions when it comes to hiring, simply because you don't know if you can keep the team busy, right? So marketing being a optional thing was something that I thought was acceptable, right? And early on, I did do some marketing when it came to word of mouth, Facebook posts, and asking customers for referrals. But that all has its place, but it's not something that you should think as a strategy early on in your business. You need to find money and you need to put it toward paid social media, Google, Angie Leads, or what was called Home Advisor at the time. So you have a way to actually, I would say, really impact your lead flow as a brand new business, because no one knows who you are. And the reality of the situation is, not only do they not know who you are, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that would hire you if they did know who you were, right? So ultimately, you're not in a game where there's, you're not doing historic seat renovations, right? You're not in a niche where it's like impossible to find a customer. You literally serve homeowners. And just so you know, my painter contractor people out there, guess what? Not only can you serve a marketplace on the outside of their house, you can also perform a service that is equal or greater value on the inside of the house, which means your market share as a painting contractor is double. So what's interesting is ultimately you got to realize, as a business, you can't think that at any point in time you can grow your business beyond your own means, right? Which is ultimately you doing the work and maybe bringing on a part-time guy. You can't grow a business without injecting energy into an area of that business. In this case, I'm referring to marketing. So where do we market our business? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Ultimately, what matters is first you get practice, right? Because here's the deal: you, as a new business owner, and someone listening to this who's an existing business owner, you don't have experience. Some of you nurturing leads, and that is such an important topic to understand, right? I did come in with this experience. I came in with car sale experience. I came in with life insurance experience. I was handed a stack of leads that looked like this. It was this thick. It was just papers. It was a cardstock paper of people that sent in a postcard requesting information on the changes in Medicare. And I was given a stack of customers to call and nurture and to generate opportunity. Okay. Now, it's not that difficult in this industry. And to me, it's almost like taking candy from a baby. All you have to do is showcase your professionalism. So if I'm not building a case for you to identify how much you should be spending on ads, ultimately as much as you can, put the money out, because it's an instant ROI. If you went to a casino and they said, hey, give me $3,000 and I will return to you $20,000. Okay, let's break that down for a second so you can understand. And it's so difficult for me to coach someone on buying leads and paying a marketing agency to run ads for them as if I'm asking them to give up a limb, when ultimately, again, the ROI is pretty much automatic. You would go to that casino and say, absolutely, not only would you give the $3,000, you'd ask everyone you know to contribute to this mission, and you would be a very rich individual, right? So here's the deal. Again, assume that as a startup, $3,000 is the marketing budget that you assign. Now, here's the deal. You might say, Tanner, I don't have $3,000. Okay, guess what? Find it. Okay, credit card, home equity loan. I don't care what you do. Ultimately, you need to do this if you're starting a business, or you will just be at the mercy of organic lead flow, which is random, which is ultimately, it's a very passive approach to business. It won't give you the confidence you need to scale. It won't allow you the confidence that you need to hire employees. It won't allow you to be selective on the job types that you take. It will force you to lower your prices to people because there's scarcity on your schedule. So think about, again, obviously it's easier to operate that way, but think about all the other things that you're giving up or potentially compromising on because you're not impacting your lead flow. Okay, so when I say impacting lead flow, again, this is a must. So think about it this way. If you spend $3,000 on leads, now I'm going to use the example of a lead aggregator, Angie Leads, okay? Regardless of how you feel about them, the market likes them, right? So people who actually buy from us trust this service to provide them information. And in that case, it's a contact of a contractor, okay? So whether you like them or not, or whether you've heard horror stories about it or not, they provide leads, and that's all they're designed to do. And if you expect them to do any more than provide leads, then that's your fault for having really inflated expectations. So ultimately, $3,000, right? So let's assume that each lead costs $100. Okay, simple math here brings us to 30 leads in the course of a month. Now, in order for you to understand how easy this is, I want you to just break down these numbers. I'm going to give them to you so you can kind of think along with me here. But $3,000, 30 leads. Now, let's assume that your set rate, right? So set rate is an important metric for you. And that ultimately is how often you set the appointment from a new lead. And in this case, on average, across the board, Drip Jobs users are getting about 50 to 55% set rate, which I believe is very good. So about half of those leads are actually going to book appointments with you. Okay. So that means that we've got 15 appointments from those 30 leads. Okay. Pretty good. Now, from there, we got to look at what our closing ratio is. So then we have our closing ratio with our set rate and then our closing ratio. What's our closing ratio? Our closing ratio is the ratio that calculates the proportion of jobs that we sell versus the proportion of jobs that we quote. So in this case, I'm going to give you a low closing ratio of 30%. That means 30% of the time that you do a proposal, you're going to sell the job. So that means if there's 15 estimates, we sell 5 of them. Not bad. On average, our average job size is, as for premium painting, is about $5,000. Okay, most of you watching this, generally speaking, you're going to be between $4,000 and $5,000, especially if you are a home service business owner. 5 times 4 is $20,000, right? So that means you spent $3,000 and you were given $20,000 worth of revenue. The secret here is to rinse and repeat and manage the numbers. So you identify, hey, even though the first 15 leads were terrible, the last 15 leads all booked estimates, right? So it's about being a student of the numbers as a business owner, rinsing and repeating and having some impact on the lead flow. Now, of course, you have Facebook ads, you have Google ads, you have all sorts of different avenues where you can achieve something similar. That was just an easy example because it's cost per lead with that service. And generally speaking, those numbers are kind of attainable. Number 4, last but not least. So let's kind of recap where we were. Number 4, number one mistake to avoid is paying people under the table and not taking finances seriously, especially if you have really ignorance toward how to do it, not being resourceful, right? So we want to avoid all that. We want to dig our well before we are thirsty. We want to create a business that's impactful, not only for our customers, but for our employees. We want to pay people the right way, even though it costs us a little more upfront. It's worth it. Okay. Number 2, big one. Okay. Again, and part of me doing this, just so you know, isn't just for the startups. Okay. I want to make that clear. It's not just for the startups. It's for the people that are in business right now too, even though startup is obviously the topic of the conversation. Number 2 is being a specialist, saying no, being a jack of all trades and a master of none is not a good thing. Okay. And the reason this happens, we talked about it, is because you have no predictability in your lead flow ultimately, and you're just seeing dollar signs, right? And ultimately, every time you do it, you know that it causes stress, confusion. Ultimately, it breaks up the system. It breaks up the consistency. and it's a detriment to your business. So that's number 2, is learning how to say no. Number 3 is having someone or paying something to generate you leads and being okay with that. Ultimately identifying, hey, in order for me to grow this thing, I need predictability. As a business owner in today's day and age, you can outsource things. Okay. That's the beauty of it. You can outsource things. You can have what's called a fractional CMO, which is a chief marketing officer, someone that's fractional. You can have a fractional CFO, someone that just comes in, does all the finances and gets out. Someone that comes in, does your marketing and gets out. You can have a fractional administrator, can't you? You can have a VA. You can have people that come in and ultimately you pay them a small amount because they're servicing other businesses. It's a beautiful thing. So there's a lot of benefits of being a business owner in today's day and age. And last but not least, this is a big one for me. Okay. Number 4, I wish I had something to manage and track my jobs and my customers. I can't emphasize this enough. Obviously, I'm the founder of Drip Jobs. This is so important to me that I felt compelled to tell you that if you don't take customer organization seriously, you'll never get to the next level, because there's so much opportunity in following up. There's so much opportunity in having a customer database. There's so much opportunity in having automations in your business that without it, it's almost impossible to compete, because you have to capitalize on opportunity. And what's beautiful about the way Drip Jobs is built is we have a pipeline that ultimately keeps track of not only your customers, right? The people that hire you, which is what I believe to be one of the most valuable things, but the leads and the opportunities, right? And I can't tell you enough how many times as a business owner early on, our job schedule was looking light. When you start to hire people and you start to take on the responsibility of giving other people a full work week, a full schedule, guess what? The pressure starts to settle in, and you can't just call your brother or call your cousin and say, hey, sorry, man, we don't have work this week. Generally speaking, these are people that don't know you, that you put your neck out to hire. They gave you their trust, or you gave them your trust, and there's no jobs on the schedule. And I can't tell you how many times having a customer database organized, neat, efficient has allowed me to make follow-up calls, right? Or even I've won jobs that were automatically followed up with, but in some cases we got to pick up that phone and sold the job, right? And bought 3 days of time on my schedule for the next week. So it would give us the momentum to schedule some more, right? So I can't tell you how valuable that is. All I can say is that don't take that lightly. That's a mistake that you will make, is thinking that you don't need a software, or you have a software that just does like invoicing, right? A free invoicing app. Your software, as you grow in today's day and age, the software is your business. That's your office, right? Most home service businesses work from home. So where's the office? It's in the software. When you get to a point where you sell your business, or somebody wants to invest in your business, or maybe even just, comes to you and say, hey, I want to buy this thing. Or maybe you want to pass it on to a relative or your children. The database of your customers is what's most valuable, right? They're getting a phone number and they're getting a database. Why wait until you're successful or until you hit $1 million to pivot and invest in great software? So of course, my plea to you is sign up for Drip Jobs. That's the best software you can get in terms of automation, organization, customer management, and it's led by me. And I have a mission to create the best software to ever exist for home service professionals. So if you want to be a part of that, go to dripjobs.com. Sign up, you get a free trial. We'll train you on it. But again, that's a mistake you can make early on, is thinking that something like Drip Jobs is too big for you, or you don't need it yet. If anyone needs it, it's you. As a startup, you need it. Oh, and by the way, if you truly are a startup and you just started your business within 60 days, we'll give you 4 months of it for free. That's dripjobs.com/startup-program. So I'll link it somewhere in the video. But those are my 4 mistakes to avoid. I hope you got something out of this. Thank you for being a viewer of the YouTube channel, listener of the podcast, and being a part of my world. It gives me great honor and joy to be able to serve you in your business. It's a blessing to serve. I remember when I first started my business, I was scared. I had no clue what to do. It was challenging. And ultimately, I think I could have got to where I wanted to be a lot faster had I had someone coaching me, guiding me, giving advice, and kind of just giving me the confidence to proceed. And I know that that's the impact that I'm making. So for you, I just wish abundant success, joy, happiness, and love. I hope that your business impacts all of those that come across it. I hope that you provide opportunity for people that need it in a good way. People need an opportunity to work for a great boss. And my mission is to help you become a great boss with great standards, great foundation, and build a business that'll last a lifetime. So thank you. It's an honor to serve. I'll catch you on the next one.